Welcome to a special holiday presentation of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. My name is Annie Day. I'm the director of the Bob Avakian Institute and the co-director of the film that we're premiering tonight, Stepping into the Future, on the occasion of the publication of Basics, a celebration of revolution and vision of a new world. I want to thank the RNL Show for hosting this online premiere. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/therevcoms and subscribing to this YouTube channel. This is a film about revolution, about art, and especially about Bob Avakian and what his work, his voice, and his leadership can inspire. In 2011, the book Basics from the Talks and Writings of Bob Avakian was published. This is a book of quotations and short essays. It's a handbook for revolution. This publication was a big deal, so we reached out to a range of artists and activists to mark the occasion. Coming from different perspectives, which you can see in the film itself, people wanted to contribute, to be part of celebrating revolution, and being inspired by the vision of a new world, and to be part of making Avakian's work known throughout society. This took shape in a cultural event that took place on April 11th, 2011 at Harlem Stage, a major auditorium and cultural center in the heart of Harlem, New York. That night, Harlem Stage came alive with poetry, with music, with dance, visual art, words of revolution, and BA's voice. Stepping into the Future is the documentary film that we made that tells the story of that night, the reflections of the participants and the artists, why they took part, their hopes, and their dreams. I directed the film with Andy Z, the host of the RNL Show, whose mission is about making an actual revolution based in the new communism developed by BA. This last year has been hard. We've experienced mass death and suffering, much of it needless and preventable. The hardening of a more virulent and lunatic fascism, existential climate crisis that's driving millions from their homes all around the world. And in the face of such darkness and suffering, there's not just the need, but the basis for hope. Hope on a scientific foundation. Hope in the scientific framework for human emancipation rooted in the new communism. A strategic approach to making an actual revolution and a concrete vision and plan for a society where humanity can thrive. All of that is concentrated in the work and the ongoing leadership of Bob Avakian. So buckle up, watch, invite your friends, let us know what you think. Stepping into the Future.
Imagine if we had a whole different art and culture. Come on, enough of this bitches and hoes and SWAT teams kicking down doors. Enough of this get low bullshit. And how come it's always the women that have to get low? We already have a situation where the masses of women and the masses of people are pushed down and held down low enough already. It's time for us to get up and get on up. Imagine if we had a society where there were a culture that, yes, was lively and full of creativity and energy and, yes, rhythm and excitement, but at the same time, instead of degrading people, lifted us up. Imagine if it gave us a vision and the reality of what it means to make a whole different society and a whole different kind of world.
April 2011 saw the release of Basics, which is a book of quotations and essays from Bob Avakian. And to mark this event, artists and others came together in Harlem in a cultural celebration of revolution and the vision of a new world.
The energy in that room was just, let's get something going. Let's celebrate.
There was a real taste of something new and something that a lot of people from their different perspectives wanted to see happen.
It was a pretty good feeling. And I think that's the most important thing.
On April 11th, Harlem Stage came alive with music, poetry, dance, film of Bob Avakian, and quotes from Basics, along with the words of revolutionaries, prisoners, and other voices of conscience. This is the story of that night, our reflections on what inspired us to be part of it, as well as our hopes and our dreams.
If you look at the world today, the world definitely cries out for revolution. And to have a revolutionary leader like Bob Avakian, leaders like that don't come along every day or every decade or every, even 20 years.
Bob Avakian is a revolutionary leader who came out of the movements of the 1960s in this country, and he was inspired by the Black Panther Party to get into communism and to get into Mao, who was the leader of the Chinese Revolution. He was then part of founding and leading the Revolutionary Communist Party here. In 1976, when the revolution was reversed in China, Avakian went deeply into why. He forged a defense of what were truly unprecedented achievements in that revolution, but also looked into how to go further and how to do better. And through that, he's forged a new synthesis of communism. And all of this, the essential questions of revolution, of human emancipation, they got distilled in Basics.
If you're starting to think about what could the world be like, or I don't like what's going on right now, it's Basics. It's literally the 101 of what a new society could be like. How do you get there?
Everybody knows that things are fucked up right now. I don't even think we have to talk about it. We know it's bad, but like, how do you get out of this? You don't take America back to what it stood for. Like when? When people were slaves? When it was genocide in the 50s? When do you want to? The only time I'd go back for is like the late 60s when maybe we could break through. So what's your solution? What are you actually going for? You need a new kind of society. You got to break down the borders. You have to treat people different, raise a whole new generation, change all the economic relations, how everyone spends money, how everything's made. You really got to go deep, and you have to have a plan. And that's why I like Bob Avakian. I like this book, because actually there's a plan here. You can make sense of it. And I haven't read anything that makes more sense than this.
If you read Basics, you get the earnestness of what he's saying. You read it going, oh, this motherfucker's for real here. He's keeping it real. Because it's profound political principle that a second grader or somebody with a PhD could get with.
We have to come together. So even though I don't necessarily think of myself as a communist, I know things in the communist ideology are in my spirit, and that we're working toward a common goal, which is really liberation of people.
I was born by the river in a little town. Oh, and just like that river, I've run ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
What am I scared of? Shoot, I'm scared of it staying just the way it is and continuing to get worse, which it seems, it is,
Things that Bob Avakian is talking about in Basics, this is actually an incredibly viable vision and plan for not only how you could make a revolution, but actually a society that people would want to live in. And I think that was encompassed on April 11th in a very beginning way.
Given the significance of Basics, it really merited some kind of major celebration. So Carl Dix, myself, and others, we talked to a bunch of artists and activists, and we gave people some of the quotes that were going to be in the book before it was released, and lots of people were into it. We even pulled together a host committee who helped make the night happen in a lot of different ways. A lot of different kinds of people wanted to be part of this, and for a lot of different kinds of reasons. Some people agree fully that the world needs a revolution and see Avakian's voice as essential to that. Other people just think his voice should be a point of reference in society.
I really wanted to get involved because I knew that the purpose of the event is to raise consciousness and also to make people aware of Bob Avakian and this movement of mobilizing people to really think about change.
It's an opportunity that doesn't come around as often as it should. We're living in revolutionary times, but the counter-revolution is winning. These are the times that need change. And so an opportunity to come about with other people that are also thinking about how the world could be radically different and trying to push that forward seems like a thing that you want to be a part of.
We thought that the possibility of social motion movements would be relatively rare given the thick ideological apparatus of the status quo that generates these clever gimmicks of weapons of mass distraction. And then, of course, the repressive apparatus that will kill you. So to have then a celebration of an alternative vision, to have a celebration of a revolutionary conception of who we are, is a beautiful thing. And I think it has something to do with what I would call revolutionary joy, which is very different than capitalist pleasure.
I think when a lot of people hear the word revolution, they think anger and negativity and screaming in the streets, and that certainly needs to be a part of it. I think our anger makes us strong and scary and powerful, but what was amazing about the evening being told through art was that it was incredibly positive. Everyone who came onto that stage had a positive message about revolution.
I know Avakian talks a lot about revolutionaries having a poetic imagination. It was really good to see an event that has to do with political or philosophical idealism of revolution.
It was a night of utopia. It just felt really great to be amongst artists who weren't, interested about personal accomplishments or, bling bling and red carpets. It was really nice to be in an event where everyone was on the same page of a mission. And the work was very genuine. It was very authentic.
That night was special to me, and it always will be, and I'll remember that forever.
It's an honor for me to be here tonight because I'm here to celebrate revolution and to pay my respects to a badass white boy.
The foundation, which is bringing about a better life for everybody on the planet, period, was there. And then you had young people, you had old people, you had a very diverse crowd. I'm just proud that I was a part of it.
How I wish I could be with you all tonight. You are where you belong and where I wish I could be, in Harlem, celebrating an alternative vision given the decline of the capitalist empire in which we live. I want to say a word about my dear brother Bob Avakian. He has a deep love of the poor people, and even as a Jesus-loving free black man, I love that brother. He bears witness. He's willing to pay a cost, and thank God we've got his text now of writings that provide us an analysis of how we think about this mess in which we find ourselves. So you are at the right place. I was just here a few months ago with my dear brother Carl Dix. We had a magnificent exchange, and even a deep democratic Christian like myself and a revolutionary communist could come together. Why? Because the people are suffering. Working people are being debased, and it's time for us to straighten our backs up. And Brother Bob Avakian is one of the voices, one of the very important voices. Have a good time. Y'all throw down tonight.
A lot of people talking about revolution wouldn't necessarily start by looking at slavery, and including in a certain sense, it's like everybody knows that America had slavery, but actually getting that it is foundational to this society, has implications for today, and that the liberation and emancipation of black people is part of any revolution worth having is something that's been a hallmark of Avakian's work.
Schizophrenia is what's wrong. I mean, you know, it was just mentally ill when you said you had a free slaveholding state in the first place. Black people weren't brought here to share in the American pie, you know, maybe barely get a crumb that fell from the table, but no, you weren't here to get a slice of the pie. The land of liberty and the home of the brave. Well, damn it, you know. You double-teamed and triple-teamed and came with the gun and came with the fire water, and no, it wasn't nothing courageous about that. Kept a hood on, you know. Just act like it is what it ain't.
America's a terrorist, killing the natives of the land. Killing and stealing has always been America's master plan. To control the earth and everything on it, to divide and conquer is all they wanted. America's a terrorist, killing the buffalo that roam the plains. Killing and slaughtering animals was turned into a game.
People always talk about the good old times. It was never a good old time for the whole world. When people use that term, the good times, they don't think about the suffering. They don't think about the turmoil that's around. All they think about is apple pie and the real America. The real America is basically white Anglo-Saxon. The real America is forgetting about slavery, forgetting about the plight of the Indian, forgetting about, well, you know, the company you work for, they have like slave labor in Africa and India and Indonesia, so there were never any good old days in America for anybody. That's all a myth.
America's a terrorist, feeding on racism and greed, not caring, not sharing, but enjoying watching people bleed.
Before the last poster started, I was always interested in what social activities were going on, just curiosity. But when they killed Dr. King, I really took things more seriously. When he was assassinated, it was like somebody had just ripped my heart out my chest, because even though I wasn't a supporter per se, I just thought that that was out of order. I knew personally I could never have marched with Dr. King because I'm not a pacifist type of guy. If you smack me in my cheek, I'm gonna try to knock your head off. I'm not gonna just stand by and close my eyes and hold somebody's hand and say, "We shall overcome." No, I'm not. It's not me.
America is a terrorist. No one wants to admit. Pointing the finger at others is the ironic part of it. Drop the bomb in Philadelphia to wipe out an organization called MOVE. Killed unarmed women and children because the police had something to prove. And all the black Panthers who were trying to help their community wiped out by the FBI trying to create black unity. Put drugs in the hood, set folks up for no good, kept unemployment high, education is laced with lies, turning people against each other, made money more sacred than your mother. And no place are you safe if you have a darker face. Amadou Diallo, Yusuf Hawkins, and Sean Bell, just to name a few. Oh, terrorism here ain't a damn thing new.
So my life is, typical. Typical what life is like for, for the oppressed, for black people under the system and stuff. And it was, early. That's what my life was about early, was, a lot of it could be characterized by eluding and combating the police and seeing like others, doing like the same thing, or even like being like killed by them or what have you. A lot of like, just, terror and brutality. When the Panthers hit the scene, it was something like they were speaking to my every feeling. young girls as well as these young guys used to come there with Panthers. Young girls 15, 16 years old. And, you know, some young guys, some of them was a little older than that. They used to come by my house with their Panther papers. And that's what they would, you know, they would tell me. They'd say, you know, nigga, you drafted into the Black Panther Party. You ain't got no more say-so in this. We used to have study classes and groups, and we were reading the Red Book, and we had to, you know, discuss it and break it down and explain it, and trying to really understand some of the stuff that Mao Zedong was talking about. Going to those kind of meetings, I found that really, and being able to be part of that process, something that's was really exciting. And we used to be out on the streets at night sometimes, you know, this stalking the, you know, I guess we call it stalking the stalkers and stuff. And, you know, the police and these, you know, the enforcers of this way of life. Baba Avakian was one of the first white revolutionaries to come out in support of the Panthers. And you see him at, they had rallies at the Oakland Auditorium where I think that was 67 or 68, Rap Brown speaking, I think James Foreman and Stokely Carmichael and Bobby Seals and Baba Avakian, the only white revolutionary brother, to be on the stage speaking with these black militants. Eldridge Cleaver, I guess, had offered him secret membership into the Black Panther Party.
And let me say one thing to the white people in the audience. Now, you know, Bobby has been saying for a long time, we will not fight racism with racism. We refuse to stoop to the level of a racist to hate somebody because of the color of his skin. Well, that's fine. But I see a lot of white people walking around and say, oh, good. Now the Black Panther Party don't hate me. I can go on about my business. That's a cop-out, and if you act like that, the Black Panther Party will hate you, not because you're white, but because you ain't taking care of business to organize other people, teach them the need to support the black liberation movement led by the Black Panther Party as a strong, fearless voice against American imperialism, and to link up with all the people in Vietnam, in China, in Angola, in Latin America, and everywhere else who are standing shoulder to shoulder to drive this vicious beast out of the way and out of the pages of history.
I'm not a nostalgic person for the 60s, but I'm just saying that there was a lot of things going on back then that warrant study. There was a lot of possibilities. Unfortunately, a lot of people lost nerve or just got consumed. I find it fascinating that somebody like Avakian could come from that background, despite not being a Panther, then go to a macro vision as far as becoming a communist ideologist and seeing how it relates to the modern world.
In the 1960s in this country, there was a revolutionary movement that shook the system to its foundation. Movements against the war in Vietnam came together with the struggle against the oppression of black people. There was women's liberation movements, a challenging of traditional gender roles, a traditional culture. Everything was being sprung into the air. And this is what Avakian came out of. And a number of other people we reached out to were also of that time. There was an appreciation for Avakian for not only not selling out, but for actually advancing on the revolutionary road. And all of that, the spirit, the defiance of the 1960s, all of that was given expression this night, but in a forward-looking way.
In the 1960s, seeing what was happening to black people and hating it and knowing something needed to be done about it, and especially as I began to look at more what was happening in the world and Vietnam, which was brought very directly to me by getting drafted into the Army and getting orders to go to Vietnam and having to grapple with, should I be a part of that? These things began to come together for me, and it was like, I can't, as a black man, go and kill Vietnamese people in the name of democracy when I know that that isn't what this is about, because I see what's happening to black people. But then you dig even deeper and you see that there's a system behind this, and that if you're going to deal with these problems, you got to deal with that system. So that's how I got on the path to being a revolutionary.
All power to the people.
The night that I spoke on the stage, I really wanted to get the point across that a revolution is possible in this country.
I want you to understand that what it is to be in the trenches for decades. Longevity and consistency. This brother is somebody that I truly admire because he has been there, he has done that, and he's still there just like I am. I've been fighting for a long time. As a young man, growing up in racist America, fighting in a racist school system in order to get an education, fighting the local police as a teenager in order to keep them from murdering me like they did my brothers and my sisters in the community. And when I joined the Black Panther Party, the fighting really started. I had to fight COINTELPRO. They murdered many of my comrades, framed many comrades, framed me, and sent us to prison and decimated the Black Panther Party. And today, to this very day, I am still fighting for my freedom and for the freedom of people everywhere all around the world. Bob Avakian has been doing it also. He came out with a book called Basics. I got it the other day. I'm reading it. One thing I want to say to young people, please get this book. When I was in the Black Panther Party, we used the Red Book as a means of uniting a whole community and uniting each other. We read that book every night in the Black Panther office. We took it to the street corners. People in our community, we'd go in their living room and we'd have block parties and bring the community together and read from the Red Book. It united us. It gave us principles. It taught us how to work together. And we did everything we could in order to bring about a revolution. That's what this country needs, and that's what we have to do. We have to have a revolution. Young people have to, now, let me tell you, I'm 70 years old, but I ain't tired, I ain't gave up, and I am not discouraged. I'm getting pretty damn impatient, though. I don't know, what the hell are we waiting on? Young people, come on now, it's your turn now. I ain't gonna leave you by yourself, but you have to step forward and take this, get that book, read it, organize, and bring about a revolution. We have to have a revolution in this country in order to save us and people all around the world.
And then he got up there, and he's like, we've been doing this for 50 years. He's like, I want to dedicate this. He made these dedications to all the sisters who don't get spoken about enough, who made all this happen. All the people who are locked up in prison right now for 40 years, their whole lives, because of what they were fighting for in the 60s, to make a revolution. And then all the people who died to make a revolution. And then he just points at all of us and says, so what are you going to do? Are you going to do anything less than fight to make a revolution? You can't argue with that. You can't argue with that.
There's a trail of tears, a new trail of death. The vigilantes and coyotes watch the sunset in the borderland with the rattlesnakes. No water, no people, but dying mistake. Que tenemos nada, que queremos todo el mundo, que tenemos nada, que queremos todo el mundo.
Our band, Outer National, we performed a song of ours called Que Queremos, which is like, you know, we don't have anything, we want the whole world. But like, we started it off with a quote. There's nothing sacred to us about the USA as it is presently constituted, or about the borders of the US as they are presently constituted. Quite the opposite.
A hallmark of Avakian's work is proceeding first and foremost from the interests of the people of the world. And we wanted this to come through in the night itself, bringing together artists who are not thinking like Americans, but are thinking about humanity.
A lot of progressive people, they always come back to this thing about Americans. How we're living here is directly connected to how somebody in Mexico does not have a job or is working for $1 a day or 10 cents a day. We're benefiting off of that. And if you really care about people and humanity, which is what Bob Avakian's work is all about, humanity as a whole, then you're not going to just be thinking about, well, how can we make America strongest and how can we make sure Americans get their jobs back? If you are able to implement a new type of society, socialism, going forward into communism, then you actually could change the dynamics of all that stuff, not just for Americans or people who live in America, but for people who live around the world.
Aladdin, get ready to pack. We are going home. We're in Harlem, Mom, already home. Just shut up, Aladdin. You never like to listen. We are going to my home, Bangladesh. Now, my mother was not in a good mood. I was 8 years old. It was 1980. My brother was a freshman in high school, attending A. Philip Randolph, right around the corner. He was dating a really hot girl. However, she was black, or as my mother says, Kalua, which always made me cringe because it was Bengali for nigger. She disapproved of this relationship. My uncle Chacha Musu, which is what I call all my uncles, and a few of her other friends of my parents dropped by. They were planning an intervention. This was a new kind of intervention. This was a stop dating a black girl intervention. My Chacha sat down on our red sofa with the plaster that stuck to your skin. And I used to love to take off my shirt off in the summer and feel my back stick to the plastic. And when I would get up, this feeling of plastic peeling off my back was like music to my skin. Orin, your mother tells me you are dating a Kalua. I'm very disturbed by this. Black people are very good people. They can be your classmates, your friends, but they cannot be your girlfriends. Keep on it, Orin. You can never date a black girl. This is not permitted. I want you to forget about this Kalua. So I said without really thinking, Chacha, aren't you a Kalua? I mean, Mongo was so black he could leave footprints on top. Next thing I remember, I felt the right hand coming around me like a Muhammad Ali uppercut. Bang! I was out for the count by my own moms. I heard birds flying around my head the way they do on Looney Tunes. As I was coming back to life, I heard my mother say, don't you ever call your uncle a Kalua. We are Bangladeshi. We are not black. Go to your room and pack. So the following week, I took my first vacation to my parents' homeland, Bangladesh. And when we got off the plane in Dhaka, I took one look at the beggars with no eyes and limbs and realized this was no vacation. When we arrived in my mother's village, strangers were hugging me. The entire village was following us like we were the Beatles. I finally got to meet my grandmother. She looked just like Cicely Tyson. I said aloud without really thinking, wow, she's a Kalua. Last thing I remember, my mother's right hand coming around me like a Muhammad Ali uppercut. Bang! Looney Tunes. Aladdin, don't disrespect your Namu. She is Bangladeshi, not Kalua. I walked away puzzled and sat on a rock next to a lake. I watched as my mother was sitting in front of her house. She was giving away food to the hungry, medicine for the sick, and toys for the children. She was like a queen. When she wanted to go to the bazaar, people started raising their voices. Wahima, you have to wear the burqa. Look at this dirty woman, huh? Still the same. Put on the damn burqa, you're not in America anymore. Don't talk to me like that. I will wear whatever I want. It is 115 degrees. It is too damn hot to wear a burqa. I'm not going to wear that stupid thing. This is haram. You are disgraced. What kind of Muslim woman are you? I was a Muslim when I left, and I am still a Muslim. You never bothered to listen to me before, but now you will hear me. Who the hell are you to tell anyone what to do? What right do you have? You never helped anyone. When I was getting beat up by my first husband at age 14, did any one of you say, this is not the Muslim way? Now you want me to cover myself up with a burqa? Do you care more about a burqa than you do for little girl? Huh? Answer me. Wow, I've never seen my mom so defiant.
I selected that piece because I really felt in my heart that's something that I wanted to communicate with the audience, that, you know, these are issues that are global. It isn't just 125th Street or Brooklyn. Race plays a part with all ethnicities. You have women in India that are being oppressed because, you know, they're following a culture where the man is dominant, and if you have babies that are girls, that your wife, your husband now has the right to beat you or shun you. That's a culture that we got to get out of.
Look at all these beautiful children who are female in the world. And in addition to all the other outrages which I have referred to, in terms of children throughout the slums and shantytowns of the third world, in addition to all the horrors that will be heaped on them, the actual living in garbage and human waste in the hundreds of millions as their fate laid out before them, yes, even before they are born. There is on top of this, For those children who are born female, the horror of everything that this will bring simply because they are female in a world of male domination. And this is true not only in the third world, in modern countries like the US as well. The statistics barely capture it. The millions who will be raped, the millions more who will be routinely demeaned, deceived, degraded, and all too often brutalized by those who are supposed to be their most intimate lovers. The way in which so many women will be shamed, hounded, and harassed if they seek to exercise reproductive rights through abortion, or even birth control. The many who will be forced into prostitution and pornography, and all those who, if they do not have that particular fate, and even if they achieve some success in this new world where supposedly there are no barriers for women, will be surrounded on every side and insulted at every moment by a society and a culture which degrades women on the streets, in the schools and workplaces, in the home and on a daily basis and in countless ways.
I just wanna be myself, live a life to the fullest. I don't really care. You can go to hell.
And some people say, yeah, well, okay, but how do we know that you won't be like others before you? How do we know you and your party won't be like the other groups that have come along in this country and others? How do we know that you won't sell out and revolution won't be betrayed, either before it even happens or after it, when you just try to turn it into your own thing for your own benefit? Well, I'll say this first of all. I myself, speaking for myself personally, have been fighting this system politically for 15 years. I've been a revolutionary for 12 and a conscious communist for 10 or more, and I got no intention of being or doing anything else as long as I'm alive and for as long as I can contribute to the struggle, and they're going to have to kill me to stop me from doing that, and we're going to fight to see that that doesn't happen either. It's not just a question that we have revolutionary determination. We've fought to get to the point where we are, to develop the revolutionary line that we have, to have the grasp and application of the revolutionary theory that we have. And there's going to be many sharp struggles to safeguard, to protect, defend that, and to apply and enrich and deepen in the process of leading not just thousands, but ultimately millions of people. And finally, I'm going to put it back to you in answering this question. If you want this party to remain on the revolutionary road, if you want this party to continue to be a sharp weapon of the working class and oppressed people for revolution and not turn into another dagger in the people's back, if you want that to happen, then you got a role to play in that. Because if you want to be emancipated, you're going to have to emancipate yourself. Ain't no saviors coming from heaven. Ain't no pope going to do it for you. Goddamn Secretary drowning Kennedy ain't going to do it either. We're going to have to emancipate ourselves if we want to be emancipated. And that's the only way it can be done anyway.
There's this similarity of language that discredits all these movements or all these individuals. It sets a precedent, like once you kind of discredit them, then basically the state can do whatever they want to get rid of them. And people are like, well, they were the bad guys anyway, so people aren't really up in arms about however the state carries forward trying to get rid of these people in these struggles.
I've always viewed myself as a prisoner, not just of hope, but a prisoner of a blood-stained hope, a prisoner of a tear-soaked hope. So that when I talk about hope, I remember all of those folk who have been murdered: Bobby Hutton, Fred Hampton, George Jackson, Martin King, and so forth and so on. See, that's hope. Anybody who's willing to tell the truth about poor and working people has to be willing to pay a major cost and bear a major burden in your life and maybe with your death.
Avakian has really persevered in the revolutionary struggle despite real personal sacrifice and at great personal risk. He is what Cornel West called a long-distance runner in the freedom struggle against imperialism and capitalism. But there's another side to that puts a responsibility on all of us. This system has gone after revolutionary leaders throughout history. And that's a lesson that we better learn. But at the same time, we aren't helpless in the face of that. And we need to be now building a movement of support for Avakian, a movement of all of those who want to see a better world or at least think that that's a question that needs to be on the table. And all of us have a responsibility to make known that we won't let Avakian be fucked with in any way.
It's a call to action. Looking at me. Phone is ringing when it dawned on me. Something trapped inside of me's gotta get free. Unlock my fantasy for some of these dreams. I fucks with your majesty, you know what I mean. Though my chest stays open, heart of glass that's broken. All the words we've spoken, I've lived, I've done, I've tried, I've cried inside. Hit and run is a simple game. Got the pedal down and you're on my brain. Gotta keep it moving, else I'm losing. Getting rid of this pain. I wanna come clean.
Avakian has never claimed that revolution is going to be easy, but it is necessary and it's possible. And there are real-world contradictions that make it possible. There's a different way the world could be, but we're going to have to fight for that with determination and with perseverance. The night of this event, we heard from different people who've been inspired to stay committed and to deepen their commitment in the face of great difficulty. One of them was a young revolutionary, Alejandro, who was very sick at the time of the event, but sent an audio message.
Good evening. This is Alejandro del Fuego with a message and revolutionary greetings. All the teens and 20-somethings who are desperately searching for something more meaningful in their lives than another hazy, chaotic, and forgotten weekend. They need to know about Bob Avakian and the party he leads. The youth in high school, from those who have never been given the opportunity to dream, to those even in the most elite institutions who see the futility and apathy of a school system designed to socialize and confine rather than educate and liberate their minds. They need to know about Bob Avakian. For those of us in my generation who are already in and around this, it's our responsibility to let them know about BA, the basics, and to bring them into changing the world. To me, basics represents a huge opportunity to spread this leadership and this method among masses from all sections of society, at a time when it is desperately needed. Bob Avakian has opened my eyes to the world as it is. Although the situation may appear bleak, he has shown that there is much more to the internal contradictions which pervade society and which are not fully apparent without this scientific method he has advanced. He's shown that there is great potential for a future world, which can and must be wrenched from this one. Furthermore, he's actively leading a party and masses of people to take up the science of communism and make revolution here in the United States, as part of an entire world revolution. In his landmark speech, Revolution, Why It's Necessary, Why It's Possible, What It's All About, BA makes the point that this system of capitalism-imperialism is a cancer. Cancer is something I'm intimately familiar with, as I've been battling its growth within me for a year and a half at this point. Both of these cancers can seem insurmountable on the surface. However, the game changer in this situation is science. In terms of the worldwide struggle for communism, Bob Avakian has developed an entire scientific synthesis of the previous experience of proletarian revolution and is continuing to forge a new path. It is with great pleasure and pride that I've been able to at least scratch the surface of his immense body of work, attempting to grasp his exhilarating insights and how it is that he's developed these. This body of work can, in a qualitatively new way, with the release of basics, be spread among masses of all strata, empowering them to envision and struggle for a liberated planet.
The night of the performance, there was a reading of letters from prisoners, and that really struck me. I mean, you can't get more real than that. I think reality is what should foster everything, not idealism or pie in the sky, anything. You know, we had to get real. And those letters were very, very real. But it was also really good to see that hope was alive. There's a lot to be said for hope. And hope is not just wishing. Hope is actually when you can see light at the end of the tunnel.
When Basics was first being put together, Revolution newspaper wrote and asked people's opinions for what should be in the book. And several prisoners responded with the same quote.
The words of Bob Avakian have resonated with me more than anything that I've ever read. There was one part from his memoir that motivated me more than any other part of the book. This section says a lot in very few words that can help overcome defeatism, which seems to plague so many people that I've tried to reach in here. I'm one of 3 prisoners that received revolution in this yard. We're all in different parts of the yard, but all 3 of us come across the same defeatist attitude, even when we are able to convince others that the present economic system is our common enemy. The answers are usually the same. Yeah, but we can't do anything about it. I believe this goes a long way to combat that kind of thinking. I think of a conversation I had with a friend when I was a teenager. He was a little older than me and he was going to medical school. He was going to go into cancer research because he wanted to help find a cure for cancer. It has been many decades since that time, and while some advances have been made in treating cancer, it's still a scourge. It hasn't yet been eliminated. A cure, to put it that way, hasn't been found. But that person has been working in this field all these years, and I would never say that his efforts have been wasted just because cancer is still here. The same applies to the question of uprooting, overturning, and abolishing these horrendous relations of exploitation, oppression, and plunder on which this system is based and on which it thrives.
The need to eliminate this system and bring something much better into being is even more profound than the need to find a cure for cancer. And if you're taking up a scientific approach to investigating, learning about, and changing reality, then you know that the means can be found to do that.
If you have had a chance to see the world as it really is, there are profoundly different roles that you can take with your life.
You could just get into the dog-eat-dog and most likely get swallowed up by it while trying to get ahead in it.
You can put your snout into the trough and try to scarf up as much as you can while scrambling desperately to get more than others.
Or you can try to do something that would change the whole direction of society and the whole way the world is. When you put those things alongside each other, which one has any meaning?
Which one really contributes to anything worthwhile? When I first read that a few years ago, it made my heart race. What I'm in prison for isn't important or uplifting, and it certainly didn't contribute to anything positive. It's quite shameful, to be honest. I only wish if I had to be here, it could be for a sacrifice I made for the people.
Your life is going to be about something, or it's going to be about nothing. And there's nothing greater your life can be about than contributing whatever you can to the revolutionary transformation of society and the world.
To put an end to all systems and relations of oppression and exploitation.
All the unnecessary suffering and destruction that goes along with them.
I have learned that more and more deeply through all the twists and turns and even the great setbacks, as well as the great achievements of the communist revolution so far, in what are really still its early stages historically.
Prisoners can really understand it when put in these terms.
With that said, I'm gone.
In solidarity, from the state of Indiana.
From a California prison.
From a California prison.
I think the letters really brought to bear the realness of people's situations and the fact that they need solutions, and then the fact that there are solutions and that somebody is trying to get at them.
So for capitalism and every system based on exploitation and oppression, the only kinds of ideas it can produce and the kinds of ideas it promotes as the ruling ideas are, not surprisingly, ideas that justify all this exploitation and oppression, that teach people that this is the natural order of things, and that encourage people to try to become big dogs in this dog-eat-dog world. If this kind of world, this kind of system, if this were all that is possible, that'd be one thing. And you see people even those who are brutally oppressed under this system, as long as they believe this is the only kind of world that's possible, you see them going along with this all the time. I got to get mine. I got to get what I can get within this. It's time to get yours. This reminds me of the story of the prisons in California, and in particular what was called the Corcoran shoe, where the guards there would take prisoners and they'd tell them stories about each other, get them angry at each other, and they'd literally put them in pens like in the old Roman Colosseum, and they'd let them out of the pens and they'd come in and start fighting with each other, sometimes to the death. And the guards would be standing above watching all this, laughing and betting on the outcome, and if it got out of hand, they'd shoot one or more of the prisoners. This was a whole scandal that finally broke into the open in the California prisons. Well, if you just look from inside that, here you are, and the door opens and you run out in this arena and you start throwing hands and everything else you can with the other person who's there, you might say, I'm a bad motherfucker. I'm handling this situation. But if you back the camera up a little bit and look at the larger picture, what's happening? You're being handled. You're being put in this horrible situation by these people standing above you, laughing, betting, and ready to kill you if they see it in their interest. And that's a miniature picture, a microcosm, as they say, of what the world is like today and the way that people get caught up in going along with this. You hear these people say, you know, I'm on this corner selling my product. I'm regulating the corner. You ain't regulating shit. You're just being regulated. You're just being put there and allowed to be there as long as what you're doing serves the people who really regulate things, who really run this system, for as long as it serves them or doesn't get in their way. You hear people say, sometimes they get caught up in all this stuff about the hood. This is our hood. Can't nobody come in here and take over our hood. This is not your hood. You don't own this. You don't run it. You don't control it. The people who own it and run it and control it are just using you. They're just letting you be played like this and carry on with all this foolishness and dangerous stuff, killing each other off because it serves their interests, while they're keeping you in these miserable conditions, not really different than the prisoners in the Corcoran shoe. It makes me think of a situation where you walk into a scene where there's a man got a gun in one hand and a big club in the other, and he's got everybody lined up. And he goes down the line breaking everybody's legs. And somebody jumps up and says, all right, Dan, I'm going to be the baddest broke-leg motherfucker there is. Something's wrong here. What we need to be doing is saying, hey, that man's breaking everybody's legs. Let's get together and stop that motherfucker from breaking everybody's legs. Now, I understand how people try to make the best of their circumstances. They say, you didn't give me nothing else, you didn't leave me nothing else, so I'm going to take this, and at least this way I can get some respect before I go out. So we can understand this. But again, let's step back and look at the larger picture, the larger world. Because we, the masses of people, are capable of much greater things than this. We are capable of completely and radically changing our circumstances, changing all of society to get rid of circumstances like these. What happens in the world affects us, and we can affect the world. And when all is said and done, we can change the whole world together with people like us all over the world.
I wish I knew how you would feel. Say out loud, sing me.
stigma of communism is, I don't know. I don't know why it scares people. I'm like, that should really turn you on. Like, you should be pumped about hearing somebody say something so far out from what anybody else has ever said. It's so out there. That should really have you like, oh, let me hear more about this. This is crazy. It's like the wildest idea you've ever heard in your life. You shouldn't be scared of it. You should be so like excited by it and crunk that you're like, okay, wait a minute. You're talking about what? You're talking about us all doing this? You're talking about us all being part of that and everybody getting a piece and everybody putting this in? It's hard to imagine people wouldn't be totally into it.
I was little in the 60s and I was growing up in the 70s, and I knew that my father had been a communist. There was a time in his life when he considered himself a communist, and and I knew that it was just, they just painted it all bad. I got all that Reagan propaganda and stuff when I'm young growing up, like communism and socialism, and it's so bad, and it's so anti-American.
I think that a lot of people have very, very preconceived notions about communism, myself being one of them. So this was a learning experience for me. And I when I say that there are people there who aren't communists, I'm not communist. But it opened my eyes about what it means today, rather than just having learned about it in the past. There's a relevance today in a way that I just didn't know.
Many of us have been told so many lies about communism. Distortions. It's the most distorted thing in the last 150 years. Maybe
Communist is anti-American, but maybe I'm anti-American because based on how things are going and what I'm reading the history was and the stories I'm hearing, yeah, this isn't it. Surely this isn't it.
When Mao changed China, I felt like everyone was on a mission from the day he took it over to kind of make him seem like the devil. And even in his death, people are fabricating lies. One of the things that's beautiful about Mao is that, from what I know about China, landlords, and they do this in India, it isn't just China, landlords would tell families, well, if you can't pay the rent, give me your daughter. Now that's morbid, but that was what was going on. So when Mao got in office, the ballets and the arts were kind of exposing what was going on. You had ballets where women were talking about how they were oppressed and dealing with that. Now, before Mao, they weren't doing that. If art reflects what's going on, I think Mao did something beautiful because in the Cultural Revolution, the art was about exposing the truth.
It's weird to step back and then think about what are we actually living in? What has been drilled into your brain? What you have been indoctrinated with to make you think that's crazy? I'm not even gonna think about that. It's ridiculous.
We need choices, chances, common sense. We need to tear down the fence wrapped around each and every one of our minds. We need good times, not bad times. New rhymes, not sad rhymes. More minds, not war crimes, so people can see if one person's not free. It's only a matter of moments when those who claim to be are not in shock by events from afar.
Capitalism's fucking up the world. It is fucking up the world. How the fuck could I be sitting watching television or pick up a newspaper and see the shit that's going on in other parts of the world or in North New Jersey and I'm not shocked by it? I'm not hurt or moved by it. That's capitalism.
We need to be proud of who we are, not what we are. A nation forcing others down to one knee. We need to be free of hate, free of contempt, free of jealousy, free to repent, free from need, freedom of speech, free to believe, free to teach our beliefs, free to grieve for those we've lost, free from religious nails on the cross, free to never allow any one person to pay to be the boss. We need to share wealth when others are poor. We need to leave ajar the door. We need to stop and think when the light says go. We need time to take time to say hello. Then, all we'll need is a new book to read, explaining how the world became one.
The emotionless
aspect of capitalism is what's destroying the world. You can't be emotionless and be communist. You can't be. But people make it seem like communism is void of emotion. That's the way capitalism has geared emotional attitudes about communism. Like you're heartless, faceless, mindless. If that could ever be severed or broken up, things would change.
Obviously, the world that we're in now has not worked on many levels. You have mountains and trees and sunrises and sunsets. They're great. They haven't failed us. But drug wars, drive-by shootings, imprisonment of minorities who've committed very minor crimes, and they end up spending their whole lives in prison. And then also a problem with unity among people. People don't understand each other. People are fearful. You have gangs. You have all of these problems. So there are many levels of our society which we have to change.
A sane society is one that takes care of the very basic needs of all its people. I don't see why we have to have anybody hungry. There's ample resources out here for that not to happen. I don't see why anybody should have to be out in the street in 0-degree weather. There's no reason. I also want to see a society where if you're sick, you don't have to pay, thousands of dollars to spend a night in the hospital. I want to see everybody have equal opportunity to pursue whatever it is that they're put on this earth to pursue.
What happened in the first wave of communist revolution, first in the Soviet Union and then in China, were profoundly liberatory. And in both of these societies, revolution was reversed. What we've seen now and have seen for some time are capitalist, whatever name they want to dress it up in. And when this happened, communists around the world were disoriented. They refused to look at it scientifically. Well, what Avakian did was he confronted this. He studied deeply. He looked at, what was advanced in these societies and where did they fall short? All from the perspective of how to forge a framework. What has to be done different and better to go all the way next time? To a communist world, free of exploitation, oppression, and the antagonistic social divisions among people. Avakian started this work in the late 1970s, and he's run up against resistance from all sides. But the point now is that we have to fight to get it out there, to make Avakian a point of reference in society, and a growing poll that people all around the world who want a better world are rallying to. Because of the work that Avakian has done, there is a new synthesis of communism. There is a viable vision and goal for a radically new and much better world. And there's a strategy and the crucial leadership needed to carry forward the struggle towards that goal. In terms of what's possible for humanity, this changes everything.
Avakian talks in his work a lot. There's a phrase he uses, a solid core with elasticity. There's fundamentals that had to be in place within the center of his vision for it to work. But there's not dogmatism. You can't have an iron fist about how things are going to unfold, because revolution is a creative thing, and that's why he always talks about the poetic spirit being involved.
Now let's step out of this world that they keep us chained in, and let's imagine what this future world can and will be like.
Shit is fucked up in this country and in the world, and it's been like that since day one of this country. And so it's not about just reforming laws or rules or trying to get this politician elected, but just really restructuring the whole country and coming up with a new plan.
We have such preconceived notions about how the world works. We've been trained to believe that this is the way the system works, this is what is possible, instead of saying the system is broken. It's bigger than that. We deserve better than what we have.
We're trying to bring about inspiration which will lead to some sort of change, what I call human revolution.
Let's talk about work. Imagine, first of all, that you actually wanted to go to work. Imagine housing. What if the housing, instead of belonging more to the rats than to the people, were actually decent housing fit for human beings?
At least we get to the point where my children could just, walk down the street and be cool to go outside and play.
Imagine if you actually had neighborhoods and communities that were being beautified, where flowers are being planted and playgrounds, not glass-infested, broken-down shit, but actual playgrounds for people, for children.
They wouldn't have a ceiling, of any kind as to what they could aspire to.
Imagine if the educational system actually told them the truth and helped them to understand about the world and history and nature and society.
To truly be able to be about not just this country or this flag or something, but really about people, about the earth and how we relate to it.
Living in a world that has some sort of justice, that you don't always have the same people on top, where maybe there's no top. A place where, we're taking care of each other, where people aren't falling through the cracks and being forgotten about, but we care that nobody is falling through the crack, that we're actually putting up systems where we're actually able to, when people do, we're able to help pick them back up and not do it begrudgingly or, with any kind of now you owe, but just because you're part of this world.
Let's imagine if we had a whole different art and culture. Come on. Enough of this bitches and hoes and SWAT teams kicking down doors. Enough of this get low bullshit.
You definitely leave a hip hop party feeling like being a woman is the shittiest thing on earth. You're not treated like a human being. That's basically what the gist of it is. You are here just to look good, be sexy, have sex with, and that's what you are.
Imagine if we had a society where there was culture. Yes, it was lively and full of creativity and energy, and yes, rhythm and excitement. But at the same time, instead of degrading people, lifted us up.
We need to create a culture that makes all this great hip-hop music, house music, new music, but that doesn't make you feel like shit afterwards. It doesn't degrade you. That doesn't make you feel like, I just danced to something that really ripped me up from top to bottom, that made me nothing.
Imagine if art and culture too, movies, songs, television, everything, challenge people to think critically, to look at things differently, to see things in a different light, but all pointing toward how we can make a better world.
It'd be amazing to go out, go dancing, and never hear a song like that. Still hear the beat, still have all the passion, the fire, the feeling, the energy, everything that a rapper has right now, to take all of that, but transform the lyrics into something that's really, you feel really good about when you leave.
We really need a plan. Like, you really need a way out. And that's why Avakian is so important, because you're not just gonna wish this away. Things are just gonna gradually get better, and if we all try hard, things are gonna get better. It's not gonna work. You really gotta uproot the thing.
Before I die, I want to see something in America change. Oh boy, that'd be great. Just something.
America is a sham. How's it working out for you? It's bullshit, right? If you peel the mask off what America really is, America is about exploiting.
We just randomly kill people and start wars. That's terrible. We can't do that anymore. I mean, we just can't do that anymore. And somebody's got to get up and talk about it.
So many people go through their lives weighed down by the daily suffering, their dreams and their spirits crushed. And a big part of that weight is the feeling that this is just the way the world has to be. Well, that's not true. The basis exists for a world without social antagonisms, for an ever more enriched intellectual and cultural life, for individuality to flourish in a collective context. Accomplishing all that is going to take a revolution. And that's what Avakian's work is about. And this night in Harlem gave us a taste of this, a taste of a whole different way to think, to feel, and to be. A taste that needs to be shared and spread as part of making revolution, making this vision of a new world a reality.
People say, well, what do you want? You know, I'm not going to sit down and come up with a list of, well, I want, you know, I want this and I want that. No, I want freedom. I want emancipation for human beings. I want suffering to stop. I want the wars to stop. I want an end to exploitation and the capitalism and to this corrupt system. It's really simple. I want human rights and I want it for the planet.
I want to see a world where all these lovely things we've discussed in dream talks can have an opportunity to come true.
Look, the world's a horror, but it doesn't have to be this way. There's a vision, there's a plan, and there's a leader that has forged the way out. And we need to take that way out and go with it and work on it.
Our fight is humanity versus inhumanity.
The options are not limited.
You see, our spirit will not be broken.
Our time is definitely now.